Hello. This is going to be part 2 of that human nature series I was thinking about doing. And the topic we'll be talking about today is hope and despair. And first, I kind of want to give my take on why we have these feelings of hope and despair. I think of a lot of things in terms of evolution and what their benefit is to our survival, and I look at hope and despair as despair is a much more ancient sort of feeling, I believe. I mean, I of course have no evidence for this, but I would assume that many creatures in the past and today that we're related to have this emotional or biological alarm in their psyche that alerts them to when there's no chance, and so they might as well just begin to fold in the tent, you know. And I think that hope is a much more recent aspect of life, and that as our brains grew and as our sense of the world developed, we began to see that even in the darkest hours, we can actually come out on top. That hope was a product of this need for humans who aren't necessarily strong or big or fast or remarkable in any physical way, except for the fact that we stand on 2 feet. But that doesn't really do anything for us survival-wise, physically. I mean, it helps us save energy, but that's about it. But that hope evolved as a way to make us want to wake up in the morning. Now, of course, I mean, it's almost impossible to find these things out, because I don't think we could ever ask a bird if they believe in hope or not, or a fish, or a crocodile. But I think it's a plausible idea, at least. Maybe not. I don't know. I'm not a scientist, but to me that seems to be the logical and scientific reason why we have these things called hope and despair. And the one thing I want to talk about is this idea called of a eucatastrophe, which was developed by Tolkien, J.R.R. Tolkien, the guy who did Lord of the Rings and all these other wonderful things. And eucatastrophe is the opposite of a catastrophe. So a catastrophe is a sudden and unpredictable change from good to bad, like an asteroid impact or a terrorist attack. And then a eucatastrophe is the sudden and unpredictable change from bad to good. And the example that Tolkien referred to a lot is the resurrection of Christ, because he was a really devout Roman Catholic. And so this whole idea is that even at the darkest hour, at the deepest and darkest layer of your despair, the light can still shine. And he built, the whole Lord of the Rings is in essence a course analysis of a eucatastrophe. And I'm not going to explain it, or I'm not going to explain how Lord of the Rings is or isn't, but I think it really goes to show that, his whole mythology is built on this idea of a eucatastrophe. And you can find it throughout history. The Battle of Thermopylae, when Leonidas and the Spartans and then a few other Greeks were crushed by the Persians. It was an utter objective defeat. It was, there was no legitimate strategic victory to come out of it for the Greeks. But what it did is it gave them a rallying cry and a reason to fight the Persians. Because before that, there was a lot of disunity among the Greeks. But after the sacrifice of the Greeks at Thermopylae, the other Greek armies decided, you know what? We can fight these Persians. If 300 Spartans and a few Athenians and Thessalonians and Thebians or whatever, if they can do that much damage to the Persians in 3 days, imagine what thousands of Greeks can do to the Persians in a single day. And so in a sense, that's a eucatastrophe, if you think the Greeks winning was a good thing. But and the whole idea of a eucatastrophe plays into the fact that despair is never actually true, because in a sense, despair is a falsity. You can never actually know that something is going to turn out bad, and that's not to say that hope is necessarily false either, because hope isn't the belief that things are going to turn out good. You don't wake up in the morning in poverty and say that things are going to turn out good. Everything's going to be fine. That's not necessarily hope. That's a form of optimism that is, I would say, ill-advised. I would say an example of hope in that situation would be, I think things are going to get better. I have faith. That's what it is. I mean, hope in a really real sense is faith, is it not? If it's not faith, then it must be an absolute. It must be absolutes. Faith is not absolutes. To have faith in something absolutely is to not even have faith in it. Is to simply, utterly, blindly believe it. And so, to hope for something is to have faith that it might happen in your favor. That the wheels and weaves of time and space will serve you justice. That's how I look at it, anyways. I'm sure some of you disagree and, throw some philosophy or some logic at me, but, I mean, those things are kind of irrelevant in something like hope, right? I mean, it's like when you try and throw the laws of science against God and you say, well, look, it disproves God. Well, not really, because, you can't even prove or disprove God. So how can you use the thing that you can't even use to prove or disprove Him to? It's like pointless, really. But yeah, I mean, hope is very essential to our survival. If we didn't hope and have faith that things could get better, we probably never would have left East Africa. We'd probably all be hunter-gatherers still, which I don't have a problem with that. I actually wouldn't mind. I've actually thought about doing it for a year or two, just for a short period of time. It's actually not a bad idea, but I digress. I mean, we have all these nice things, and we have to ask ourselves: is this the result of just like us being smart, or is it the result of us thinking that we can make things better? Because that's what hope is about, right? It's about things possibly getting better. And how can you think ahead into what might be without hope? If you think ahead, you can think things will stay the same, they will get worse, or they get better. Now, I don't know the term for if you believe nothing's going to change. Maybe like a I don't know. I can't think of one. But if you think things are going to get worse, you're a fatalist. You're a pessimist. But if you think things are going to get better, you're an optimist. And optimism comes in different shades. Obviously, you can be the person that's like, we'll get better tomorrow. We'll be living in a bright and shiny future. Or it can be, it's going to take some time. I mean, I probably won't get to live in a better life, but my children will. So there's this wide varying degree of optimism, just like pessimism. Some people say that these nuclear weapons are really bad, and I think eventually down the road, 100 years from now, maybe someone's going to use them. Eventually, someone's going to use them. It's inevitable. And then someone else would say, you know what? Tomorrow. It's going to be tomorrow. I'm going to my shelter. People do that. People buy into this. Whenever those people come out and say the world's going to end in 3 weeks or it's going to end in 2012. I mean, there's no actual evidence to back it up. They still believe it, and I think it goes to show that the evidence can never support fully what's going to happen, unless, of course, it's barreling right towards you and you can see it. But when it's something so vague as to be, progress or regress, you might as well hope for the best. You might as well hope for it. Because what is despair going to do for you? It's going to It's not going to spur you on to inspiration because you've already given up. That's what despair is. You've given up. You quit. You folded in the towel. You threw in the tent, or threw in the towel, folded the tent, whatever. But despair says, hope says, you know what? Yeah, things are bad now, but I could probably make it better. I'll make it better, especially if I got these people with me. So I think it behooves us as individuals and as society as a whole to actually march forward with hope in our hearts instead of despair, because despair does nothing good for anyone. So I guess that's kind of I don't know if this qualifies rants, but whatever. The next episode of this will be on love and hate. So I don't know when it's going to happen. It might be a month or a year from now. It might be tomorrow. Who knows? Anyways, deuces.